Juan can
Yep,
tell you what
I've
this
got-
is all about, but.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we're live again.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're on our 10:45 agenda. This is an action item. This is to sign the 2020 Emergency Management Planning Grant App Adjustment.
I'm there.
And Juan, come up to the mic, and if you could please kind of give a background to Mr. Allen on kind of what all this is, so that he understands.
Yes, sir. Juan Bonilla, County Emergency Manager. So this is the 2020 grant, which is a currently closed grant. It's the Emergency Management Performance Grant. That's what pays the emergency management cost for the county. That is a shared grant at 50%. So county puts in 50%. The federal grant puts in the additional 50% as we move through the process. What this is an adjustment grant to the 2020, even though it's closed, because we didn't spend all of the dollars. Rather, we didn't spend all of the cents in this case. 5 cents were not spent. So we have to do an adjustment so we could make that 5 cents available to the pool of money that wasn't utilized for the 2020. And then it'll get added to whatever funding mechanisms are there that allow for extra granting as we move forward. And that's what this is for. So again, this is the EMPG grant 2020 that we did utilize. It is closed, but there is a portion that was left of 5 cents that we have to adjust the grant for as per documentation and rules within the grant narrative. So what I'm looking for today is just an approval to sign that grant adjustment and a signature with the EIN number, and then I can get that sent to the state so they can allocate those 5 cents into the general fund.
You're not serious, 5 cents?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Okay.
They monitor every single penny that I spend or not spend. So I don't want to hold up any other grants because of 5 cents.
Well, these little things will trip you up hard later on
They
if you
will,
don't do them
yes.
right. Yep.
I move
Everybody
that we-
understand then?
I think so.
I move to approve the 2020 EMP grant adjustment.
I'll second it.
Moved in second. All in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye, motion carries.
wonder how much money it cost them to do that.
More than 5 cents.
A heck of a lot.
Somebody in your department messed up, didn't they?
And then clerk, if I could just get that sent to me in an email with that stuff.
Do you have one that they could sign?
I have one right here.
If you can have
Oh, awesome.
Mr. Chairman sign it, that would be fantastic.
Okay, so name here, print your name here, sign here, and then I'll run down and get the EIN number. And then one more thing, commissioners, I just got off the phone this last Friday with the state. The state's going to be getting rid of their disaster declaration for COVID on the 15th. I know that we still have one open as a local emergency declaration here, so if I would.
We do?
We do?
We've never closed it.
Okay, we need to do that.
So I was hoping that you could bring it up at the 11th meeting to close it.
Okay.
On the same time on that Friday, the 15th, and follow the state,
I thought the States was already closed, so
the 15th.
they announced it then like, what, a month ago. They must have put an end date on it.
So Doug, you got that on the agenda? Next week?
So that just came in off the press, so I just want to let you know.
Thank you for reminding us that.
I just every week put in that we still have it available, so.
What should the title of that be, one?
Sunset the
Emergency declaration.
declaration for COVID-19. All right, thank you guys very much. That's all I have, unless you have other questions.
Thanks, Ron.
No, thanks Juan for all you do.
Have a good day.
You too.
Nice seeing you up there, sir.
Thank you, Juan.
Are you familiar with his role in the county, what he does for us?
Fire chief, not only fire chief, but he's one of the district manager of the Donley Fire District, right?
So he's also the county's emergency manager.
Okay.
So during COVID, he was the one that actually opened up the emergency center
Okay.
and did all of the management there. So anytime the county itself has an emergency, we pay him to be our emergency manager.
Okay.
He upgrades, we actually have a fire mitigation plan that we work
Okay.
on. We do
Yeah.
a county emergency plan and there is a
All hazard,
larger all hazard.
all hazard mitigation plan.
Yeah.
These things have to be updated about every 5 years. If you're not updated, then if you do request FEMA money, which we did on when Stibnite Road washed out 3 years ago, which we're still waiting for that money,
Uh-huh.
about 700,000. Hopefully it'll be here this year. He does all those plans too and does those
Yeah,
hearings and gets
okay.
those people involved. So he earns his money. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But if
I
we do have an
didn't-
emergency,
I didn't realize that part of his, function.
yeah.
But is that a kind of like a contractual type thing then we do with them? Yeah.
And this grant, if you notice on it, it's gone up to about 30,500. Homeland Security pays half, we pay the other half. When we first started this years back, it was about 24,000. So each year it goes up a little bit.
Yeah.
But-
And that's that's the budget that he or we have to work in if, on any emergency, if we have a huge wildfire situation, it gets the county drawn in, or, and I'm guessing search and rescue probably falls under that.
He coordinates all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
As far
too much.
as,
Usually the sheriff's kind of does the search and rescue stuff,
yeah,
but it's more natural disaster stuff.
a natural disaster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fire, floods,
Yeah.
bridge washouts. We use them a lot on road culvert washouts, that kind of stuff. But
And we call him in as needed to work, to do these things. Yeah.
no, like he'll call, usually it's the chairman of the board, he'll call and say, hey, I need to declare an emergency on this creek because it washed out this road so that we can legally shut that road off and deny access or whatever the issue may be. And so, I need an emergency declaration from you today so that I can start this process. And then I bring it in front of the board the next meeting and we get approval of that declaration. But,
Didn't we do last year? We had a fire up in Yellow Pine or outside of Yellow Pine, Big Creek. We declared an emergency up there so that we could open up immediate funding for overtime pay and all the firefighters.
Seems like $30,000 wouldn't go a long way.
No, that's his pay. That's his
his.
paycheck.
He's,
but well, see, we only pay half that.
yeah, okay.
But then it opens up the portal. Once we declare an
Right, then
emergency.
any agency
then
we
it
get
opens up.
funding from would just come through that venue, yeah.
And he partners with the state
Okay,
emergency departments. I don't know what they're called, but
great.
Okay, we're going to move on down to our agenda. Our next item is an action item. This is approval of the fiscal year 21 Valley County audit, which we had last week from, what's his name, Jared?
Jordan?
Jordan?
Zweigart.
Jordan
Zweigart
Zweigart.
Associates.
And it costs the county about 18,500 a year to have our audit done, which Doug gave you there, to make sure we're all up and snuff on our practices. The little one, the thin one that's on the bottom is the EMS side of the budget, which we're in charge of that as well. And he went through both of those and we had a great clean audit, which tells us that we have all the secondary backups for all the information he needs. We have protections in areas where there's cash handled, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because audits can be very expensive. There's some counties that spend a lot of money just on having their books audited. We get a heck of a deal with Zweigart. They've been doing it for quite a few years.
Weigart is a company that does this kind of business.
Yep.
the
And I think
CPA
there's only
office.
3 in the state of Idaho that do audit government books.
Okay.
So it's kind of a specific function by these guys, but they do a great job. It's my first time going through an audit, I couldn't keep up with the guy. It's like, wait a minute, what is this and what is this? And over the years, you'll get better and better. It really helps you down the road if you go through enough of them as far as the budgeting side of it, knowing kind of where your short funds and where you're going to need money in the future. And Doug and Gabby do a lot of our budgets here for us. We kind of go through after they've kind of put it all together and look at things and make sure we're not forgetting something. And in the old days, we used to do each department and they would come in with the commissioners and we would go through line item for line item. And it was a slow process. And when Doug came on, he immediately helped us with fix that problem. And
Well, you still, Commissioner, sorry to interrupt
Still
you,
do
Mr.
it.
Chairman. You still meet with the elected officials and department heads during the
Yeah.
budgeting process, but what the what's conducted now is my office meets with them prior to them meeting with the commissioners, and it seems to assist all of us during the budgeting process.
Yeah, it kind of makes you, in a way, that makes you kind of quasi, at least financial manage office, right?
Well, and where the rub really comes is if you have a department comes in and they've requested a big change to their budget because they want this, this, and this, and two more people. And then you have to sit down and say, okay, why do you need two more people to do this function that you're able to do? You know, no, I don't think you do need that. And that's where things can get kind of tight and hot. But that's our job as commissioners to make sure we're spending the money wisely. And what we found out and what Sherry and I have been pushing for a couple of years is the technology can take the place of a lot of folks.
Oh, yeah.
And
And
now we're requiring also, we have a capital improvement plan group that meets. Doug heads that, I head that. And we actually, any funds that are spent over $50,000, they have to actually do an application for that. They have to score it. They have to tell us why they need that funding. So we're looking at all large expenditures. And then if they want new employees, they have to, there is a form that HR sends out and says, how does this meet our guiding principles? We have what's called the STAR, Service, Transparent, Accountable, Responsive. So we have to prove why a new employee actually improves their ability to do that. So that impacts the budget too. Everything goes back to a strategic plan.
And it's not micromanaging, that's,
well, I think when it comes to me, when it comes to budget and actual dollars, we are micromanaging, but that's our job.
yeah.
But it's not my job to go in and tell June, you don't need these extra appraisers, or
Right.
maybe you do need, I know this year they're gonna request a second cartographer because she's overwhelmed with the amount of land exchanges
Right.
and making sure that the new owners and the addresses and all that stuff gets on that plat is overwhelming, and she's gonna request some, maybe a full-time, maybe a part-time, I don't know yet. My feeling is they have a lot of scanning they need to do down in there, the old records. And so her idea is I'm gonna do half-time cartography, half-time scanner. So that she can go in and start doing this process for
Getting
them.
this stuff in
We're
there.
already getting a lot of requests for,
And
they're.
that's been an
that's-
issue for years, is scanning the old
Well,
records.
Records, I'm sure, a major issue there.
Well,
Actually,
and then scanning them so that we can get to them later, you know?
yeah.
And
I
Mr.
was just telling, go downstairs and look in the front room. That's just one department's.
Well, yeah, I mean, that brings to mind just something I wanted to go ask you about, in the air subdivision, the guy developed this thing and made a statement in there that when it's more than a certain percentage he'd sold, he turned it over to the association. And the common ground, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay,
Common
yeah.
ground over to well, right now, today, I know the common ground is still technically owned by the developer.
But we don't do
And-
any of that.
And so that gets into that thing you're talking about, well, these records, it's major, I'm sure.
And I think
We don't enforce anything
the
like
code,
that.
no, but the code enforcement person is gonna find that.
Yeah.
And we just started that code enforcement, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? She's gonna start going back through these CUPs and say, hey, you were supposed to landscape, or you were supposed to do this and
Right.
that.
Yeah,
We haven't seen that yet.
I'll tell you what, I'm really happy to see that position there.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been something we've needed for a long, long time.
Yeah.
We're a
Because
little
it's-
off topic.
We are, we're talking about audit, but we got
Anyway,
a lot of time, and Ed's a new guy, so there's gonna be
Yeah,
lots
there's
of
gonna be
questions.
lots- and
but I'm
that's
not
great.
gonna, I know, we can
Yeah.
stay with this, and if something needs to be made an agenda item, we can do it.
We have until 11:40 to talk about this, because usually the audits don't take very long. I'm sure everybody, well, except for Ed, got a chance to look at them. We did get the corrections from Zweigart on some stuff we were missing.
That's what I wanted to point out. So anytime that, on page 77 of the large book, when he finds something where there's a correction where we need to put new policy in place, that's kind of where he calls that out. And the hardest part, honestly, Ed, I don't even know, you may be a lot faster than I am, but all these titled funds that can only be spent for specific items.
Certain things, yeah.
Title III is federal forest funds. Those can only be spent on very, very specific items.
Mhm.
And so they're requesting that now we have to do a comment period anytime we're gonna use some of those funds, which we've never done before.
Hmm.
So that's a new request that they found and they're calling out.
So Title III
And-
right now, and correct me Doug if I'm wrong here, but we use for Stephanie's program, the Firewatch program, and then also search and rescue.
That's correct.
So if search and rescue wants a new snowmobile or a new truck, then they come to us, they request it, and we've got to make sure that we advertise that so the public knows that this is Title III funds, which we've been started to do. It's in the paper, it's all for the public forum, and so we're trying to do what the auditor's asking and more openness with the folks in it, but that's about the only place you can spend Title III dollars.
And it can only be on federal ground.
Yeah.
So like the Cascade Fire Department just
Oh.
came and bought a snowmobile, but
Mhm.
it's for fire rescue and search and rescue, emergency rescue, but it's gotta be on federal ground. So they have to keep records now saying this number of hours was spent on federal ground and that's what.
As opposed to any kind of thing we do on private, yeah.
Right.
It's just, yeah, record keeping,
And, you know,
There's a ton of it.
yeah.
when somebody gives you money, they want to know how it's spent. You probably better do it.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
seems like a logical.
So let's
And
get
then
back
the
to
other
this.
thing on the Fair Board, the next page. So the one thing that we've gone back and forth this year on Fair Board was Fair Board actually collects taxpayer dollars every year
Uh-huh.
and then puts those toward the fair and rodeo. But there was a lot of questions and concerns on how those funds were being spent because they'd never been audited.
Yeah.
And so we put them in now as part of our audit, so we know taxpayer funds are being appropriately spent. And then we also have found that the county owns all those grounds, so we will start maintaining the fairground buildings.
Hmm.
That's why buildings and grounds have become engaged.
Mhm.
The things that are needed on that ground down there will be a part of the budget.
Yeah.
So,
And that
That's the other
comes
thing
back
that got
into that
called out.
one where we said, like, somebody down there in that maintenance department needs to be doing schedule.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then the
Part
other
of
thing to
your-
keep in mind is you can actually levy.
Yeah.
There's a levy amount for
That's right.
fairgrounds,
Mhm.
but you have levies for other things too.
Right.
And, you know, Idaho Code has limited our budget to 3% a year.
Mhm.
So if we raise that full 3%, that levy can change depending on where you want to spend your money,
Mhm.
but you can't exceed that 3%.
Now, any board could ask for a levy increase, right? I mean, any board, not all boards are funded by levies. I think, right?
Well, like
All
EMS can only go at 3% a year too.
What kind of boards? Need to declare
Well,
that.
fair board or
So
the,
the
well, districts, I'm sorry, districts. Are we talking,
districts are totally
district?
different. They're
Yeah.
totally separate taxing
but
districts.
the fair board, wouldn't the fair board be kind of,
They're underneath our budget. So the fair board functions on behalf
Okay.
of LA County, but state's
but if there's a
code.
fair district, then that would pay for the funding or anything, right?
Yeah, so
There's no
state
fair district.
State statute gives us the ability to create a fair board to provide a
Yeah,
fair and rodeo
okay.
every year. Okay? So that is under our budget to
Oh,
raise
okay.
those funds. However, state statute allows them to levy for a certain percentage of, a budget. It's 3% maybe, but it's a certain, they have restrictions upon what they can levy. So we levy separately for its property taxes, but within our budget, we levy for the fair board, solid waste. There's some separate avenues, but that all has to come within our budget.
But I think the issue that we always face year after year is if we've got to raise general fund levy to cover the expenses that the county has, that limits us from being able to raise like the fair board levy because we've already maxed out at 3% on this levy. You know what I'm saying? So there's some floating up and down. EMS is a whole separate budget that can only go up 3% a year.
They're their own taxing.
And we usually go the full 3% because they're so short funded
Mhm.
and so that we can levy the max. When they started out EMS district years ago, they didn't start out with enough funds. And those guys are so far behind now to where they can't pay more folks to work in EMS. It's all volunteers. So they're trying to get to where they can convert their EMT guys to paramedics. Very expensive proposition, but they don't have enough funds to do that. So those are the kind of things that you wrestle with when you do these budget hearings. And you know, how far we go. We've always tried to do the best we can with them year after year, but, and the fair, because we're gonna take over maintenance, okay, do we raise our county levy fund to cover that cost of maintenance, or do we raise the fair board levy to cover that maintenance? So there's some questions. You could take it from both theoretically. But, you know, you gotta kind of figure out where your best bang is as far as which levy you raise. And that's the challenging fun part for me, is trying to balance all that out. Then you have the new issue of new construction. And if you had last year, I think it was 70-some million in construction, take that times your levy rate of last year, that creates how much tax money, revenue you're actually gonna bring in. So now I've got a couple of 300,000 too from new construction that I can throw into all this to try and figure out how to balance the budget in the end. And then, you know, it's fun. It's a bucket of fun.
So this just tells us Doug's doing
Mind-boggling,
a,
but yeah.
Doug's doing a
Oh, yeah.
fantastic job.
Yeah,
so.
this is where I think this is almost invaluable to have this coming from a department like Doug's, this original, bean counting or whatever you want to call
And I really appreciate Doug's office doing a lot of the
Yeah.
pre-budget stuff,
it.
because that's taken so much stress off of us.
Oh, yeah. I don't know
But
how you do that.
you're gonna go home at the end of some of these meetings and go, I hope we didn't screw up. Because sometimes you don't know until you get way down in the budget and say, well, we shorted those folks. You know,
Bad.
that's where the stress comes in and the challenges. But anyway, let's get back to our agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve that 21 Valley County audit if everybody's good with it.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2021 Valley County audit.
And I'll second that one.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. And we got about 5 minutes to do EMS, so if you guys want to take a break.
Now,
Training, good job.
Yep.
Takes years.
I feel bad for him because honestly, for the first 9 months, I didn't know anything. So it's like.
Well, and then